Hi, you entrepreneurs. Today we have David McCuaig. He is the founder, president, and managing attorney of SONA Legal APC. You want to hear this. He has a very interesting background, traveled a lot, Australia, Europe, and then to the United States. Even if you're not into the attorney field and you're not an attorney yourself, but you're just looking to hear a good story of travel, you're going to want to listen, subscribe, and of course, tell your friends. Thanks, guys. Love to hear your feedback.
Welcome to the road to growth, success of an entrepreneur.
We've raised the bar.
Learn firsthand from successful business owners and create your own path to success.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
It's time to hit the road to growth with real estate agent Vinny SD.
All right, so we are here with David McCuaig.
That's right.
Yes. All right. So, like we were talking about previously, you're an attorney that focuses on business to business.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah. So you have a very interesting background where you grew up in a little bit out of the country and then came to the United States. Can you kind of give our listeners a little insight into your early years?
Sure. Yeah, I can give you the brief version. So my folks are from all over the place. My dad is Northern Irish from a tiny little island called Rathlin Island, population 60. It's basically between Scotland and Northern Ireland. And my mom is from Amsterdam, but also spent a lot of time growing up in the Australian outback. So I spent my formative years, I was born in Brisbane, Australia, lived there till I was 4 years old. And then we moved back to Amsterdam for about 10 years. So that's kind of where I spent my formative years, and all my mom's family is out there. She has a large family. And then when we were 14 years old, we won the green card lottery as a family. And that's when we decided to pack up and come out here to the States. So I went to high school in LA. And then I went to undergraduate at UC San Diego. I went to law school in D.C. and then kind of slowly made my way back here to the good weather.
Okay. I have to jump on to two things. So the population, your dad's population in Northern Ireland was 60 people?
Yeah, that's correct.
Tiny. Oh my gosh. It's so funny. My uncle, he lives in a similar kind of place, and he would make a joke that he was the mayor, the chief of police, and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, no, and that's kind of what it was like out there too. My grandpa owned the pub, the one pub on the island, and then also had a farm. So it was kind of the same thing where they joked that he was, by virtue of having the pub, he was kind of the mayor of the island. And it was, it was one of those places where, you needed generators for electricity up until the, early to mid 90s. So it was a pretty rugged place, but it's a beautiful place. And
has it expanded? Has it grown?
Yeah, it's doubled in size. So I think there's about 120 people now. I think it's kind of gotten on the tourism circuit a little bit more. They have a better ferry that goes to the island, so I think you can actually take your car to the island now. I'm not 100% sure. So it's kind of it's getting on the map, and I think some kids have like a rave festival there once a year now too.
Oh.
But overall, it's still pretty.
120 people, yeah.
Yeah, it's still out of the way. It's not on the tourist track yet.
So you probably get it all the time with Amsterdam, right? There, especially the people that haven't been there, right? Even people that've been there. It's growing up with that surrounding, and I think most people probably think of like the red light district and all the stuff that there, but outside of that area, it's great. Great communities.
Absolutely.
Like, so do you what's the conversation when people say that you live there in Amsterdam?
I think it's kind of a question of trying to dispel the stereotype a little bit. Amsterdam, we have one of the best educational systems in the world. It's very safe. I lived in a small town outside of Amsterdam, so it's not like you've got, prostitutes walking in front of your door or people doing all kinds of drugs right around you. If anything, I'd say it was, the opposite kind of experience. I think that reputation, it's funny because I always kind of joke too that I feel like I know more Americans that are into, going to the coffee shop and doing all that kind of stuff than Dutch people. I think what it was for us is they try and educate you on those types of topics earlier and just, rather than kind of trying to use scare tactics, try and educate you on those topics. And I don't know, make sure that I guess you kind of know what it is. So what I found over there is that a lot of kids kind of do the binge drinking and the, experimentation and that stuff at a younger age than out here. So, I mean, when I was 13, 14 years old, kids were already, getting into the bar and being able to sneak beers and kind of doing the things that I saw kids doing here in high school a little bit later on. And then by the time my friends were kind of in middle school, late high school, they'd start growing out of it. And then by the time they get to college, it seemed like there wasn't really a lot of that going on, versus here I found that, it seems like you've got the drinking age 21, right? So it's still this kind of rebellious, cool thing to do. And I definitely noticed that it seemed to be more kind of partying almost going on in the States, especially in college, than there was out there.
Well, it was surprising. I heard a stat, and this is an older stat. I got to get some newer stats, but it was like 20% of what you learn in college is retained, something like that in the United States. So I'm curious if the partying was kind of taken at an earlier age over there, if that's a higher number.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. But I mean, I think there's merits to both approaches, but I think overall, that whole idea of Amsterdam as just this kind of smoked out, stone drunken town is definitely it's pretty far from the truth from what you see. I mean, it's almost like it's a Disneyland type tourist attraction thing where it's just put there to it generates income and they get notoriety and it brings tourists and all that. So maybe it's more of that, but yeah. Especially
when you get off the train right there, it definitely looks like Disneyland right there.
Yeah, and I think the location has a lot to do with it, right? Because you're literally 5 minutes away from where most people get off the train. So I could completely understand how people would get that image and say, "Holy smokes!" I mean, if the whole country was like that, you'd be wondering how do they get anything done. Yeah. So it's definitely understandable.
How was the transition when you came from over there and I guess a different way of looking at things to the United States? Was there any kind of transition of kind of getting reacclimated or getting acclimated to a new society?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's kind of what we talked about a little bit earlier before we went on air, which is that, and I think a lot of immigrants, especially in the United States, can relate to this, which is that, at that age, especially 14 years old, right? I mean, you kind of think you know your place in the world. You think you know who your friends are and what the appropriate jokes are and, what your sense of humor should be and what the cool music is and what kind of clothes you should wear. And then when you come to a different country and all of those things are kind of called into question, or you find that, for example, your LA Raiders socks that you think are so cool are suddenly not so cool in LA public school anymore, right? So I think it's a big adjustment, and you tend to be kind of insecure when you're that age anyway. So definitely took a little while to get over that and to kind of you basically have to learn a new culture, right? So it just takes a little bit of time to.
Is there any tidbits or maybe help you can offer someone that maybe is at a young age transitioning over here at 14, 15?
Oh, 100%. The first thing I would say is you have athletic scholarships out here. Take note, because I had no idea. And so I played soccer up until I think it was 9th grade, and then I didn't really pursue it anymore. But if I would have known that I could have had someone pay $80,000 towards my college education because I'm good at soccer, I probably would have hit the track a little bit more and stayed in shape and kept practicing soccer and figured out if there was some sport I could do into college and get that scholarship going.
Do you still play soccer?
I still play for fun, but I have old man knees now, so that's not too much.
What is that? The age is going to be the one person is always going to win or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. There's no stopping time.
So you do high school, you go to college. When did you realize that you wanted to be an attorney?
I think I always, ever since I was a little kid, I kind of had this notion in the back of my head of wanting to be an attorney. I think the type of law that I practice now might not be the exact same as what it was at that time. But even when I was a little kid, I kind of had this notion of the law as this kind of protector of justice and, a way to preserve equality, amongst people and to try and make sure that the way we interact with each other is according to some set of justice and fairness and rules. And, obviously with age, you realize that sometimes these ideas don't always pan out that way in the real world. but overall, I still think that the law does have this kind of power to it in the sense that it is this, it's a set of rules that we've decided to live by as a society and to do business according to those rules. So I think the allure of it is still the same. I just think the way that I perceived it back then as a 10-year-old is probably a little bit different than what I would perceive it as now.
What so when did you know you wanted to do like business law?
I think for me, business law was more in law school when, the way it works in law school is, you have the opportunity to do internships and you take these different classes. And so you learn about different areas of law. And, before I was more interested in litigation, right? That kind of traditional Atticus Finch type fight for the little man or fight for justice. But there's a level of antagonism to that as well. And I think the adversarial system in and of itself obviously can be wearing too. And so for me, the transactional components of it kind of allowed you to still practice law without maybe necessarily having that level of antagonism. So that's what drew me to the transactional work in the first place. Now, that being said, I graduated law school in 2008, which is in the middle of the worst economic downturn that in recent memory. So I did end up taking a job as a litigator with a law firm out of law school, and I did that for 3.5 years, and then for another year or two afterwards that as I was getting my firm started up as well. So
when you joined a law firm that maybe wasn't where your passion was at, right? How was that? Was it like looking towards the goal of I'm going to open my law firm in X amount of years, or was it like I just need a job right now, just stay afloat?
I think it's a combination of both. I think it's easy to kind of say, hey, look, I had this all planned out and I knew this was the way it was going to happen. But I think a lot of us in 2008, when we graduated with 6 figures in law school debt, and you kind of been fed this story your whole college and law school career that there's abundance and and the economy had been great for a long time at that point. So you kind of think, oh, well, I'm going to come out of law school, I'm going to do exactly what I want, and I'm going to make tons of money doing it, and there's never going to be any issues, right? And that's obviously not the way that the real world works. So I think, when you're in '08 and you're just trying to get by and you're hearing of people just fallen by the wayside, right? I mean, it was crazy what was going on in '08. So I think I'd like to say that I had it all planned out, but I think part of it too was just saying, look, you need to get a job, you need to get some experience, and you just need to bide your time. And I think at that time too, any job was good because you're looking at this like, I've studied so long and I've worked so hard. I mean, let's just do something at this point, right? Let's just be a part of adult society rather than just be a student. Get your feet wet.
Was there anything that or some moments where it was like, okay, this is what we practice and this is actually what happens when you're at the law firm?
100%, all the time. All the time. Yeah. I mean, there's a big difference between kind of what's on the books versus the way it plays out in the real world, definitely. And I think that's one of the biggest pitfalls as a young attorney too that you can get into, where what the written law is one thing, but then maybe the way that it would play out in the real world is something that's a little bit different. Or little laws or little rules that you think are kind of a huge deal, and that you always think as a young lawyer that you found the one little tidbit that's going to break open the case, right? And it's never that way for the most part, right? And the older you get too, even as if I were to be a litigator still today, when you're young, you always kind of want to be the guy to go to the Supreme Court and create the new laws and this and that. And if you're a litigator and you were going to do that for the rest of your career, you don't want to be the litigator necessarily that's always out there setting precedent. You just want to be the litigator that's settling the case for your client at the most advantageous terms possible. Just keep your head down and stay low and stay under the radar, especially when it comes to, things like business litigation. Your clients don't want to be the business that's listed in your practice guide or in your the books that law students are reading about.
So when was the point that okay, I'm comfortable, I'm making a good living, now I need to find my practice, go back to my passion?
I think for me it was actually not as well planned out as it could have been. It's funny because I'm actually doing a seminar on this soon with another lawyer where I'm kind of the example of okay, this was maybe a little bit rash. We got here eventually, but you probably could have done it a better way. And that's the other attorney that we're going to bring in. But for me, it was kind of, I had a come to God moment, where I saw myself 30, 40 years down the road, and I asked myself, well, is this what you want to be doing? And the answer was no. So I actually made a pretty rash decision as far as leaving the firm that I was with at the time. And luckily I had some connections with other lawyers and was able to get contract work, and I was fine as far as paying the bills goes. But it wasn't like I had all my clients lined up. I knew how to run a business. I'm not going to skip a beat here. I mean, the transition period was actually pretty interesting, because you have that one transition period after law school where you're kind of, especially in 2008, you're looking for work. But then you also had that transition period after my 3.5 years at the firm, where I started my new firm, and I almost kind of felt like I was a new student, coming out of law school, because I only knew how to practice law. I didn't know how to run a business. And for me, those were two very different things.
What were some of the things you learned on your feet about starting your own business?
I think number one for me is how hard it is to actually get clients. I think you just, I thought about it, but I always considered myself to be a pretty personable guy. So I kind of thought, okay, well, I'm just going to get out there and figure it out. And I forget who it was, but someone told me that people have to know you first, and then they have to like you, and then they trust you. And it's only at that point, once you do business with them, right? So not only do you need to get out in front of people, but you need to take the time to develop those relationships. So I think for me, the timeline that it ended up being, as far as building a client base and getting to that point, was longer than I thought it would have been. And then it's just all those little things that you usually pawn off to your secretary or your paralegal when you're sitting at the firm. It's things as simple as getting mail out and figuring out a way to do the bookkeeping and the admin, and just all these little things that you would never consider when you're just kind of an attorney on the assembly line at the firm, right? Where you're just doing what you're specialized in, and then your staff kind of handles all those things around it. So it's a re-education. For me, it was like learning a whole new skill set.
And most of your business these days is a lot of word of mouth, right? Referral based, said?
Yeah, and I think for my type of business, that's pretty common. So I'm a business transactions attorney, right? So I help out firms and companies with their day-to-day legal needs, their contracts. If they're selling a business or doing a deal, bringing in investors, then that's the kind of stuff that I help out with. So I'm not like a personal injury lawyer where I could kind of bring in people off the street, or where people might even want a lawyer just based on a billboard that they see or anything like that. For me, those relationships tend to be positions of trust. And so the best way to earn that trust, at least right off the bat, is to have a referral from a colleague, or, from another lawyer, another professional, or a family member or a friend, that can give you that little bit of social capital that you need to then build the relationship with the client.
Was that difficult at all? Because that's something that you're new to you, right? About asking for the business, networking with other business owners. Was that something new, or how did that come about?
No, that was something new, and it's something that took me a little while, because I'm naturally, I wouldn't say I'm an introvert. I'm pretty gregarious and social, but I think there's a skill set to it, to going out and talking to people, knowing the right questions to ask, and knowing how to interact, and it just takes time to develop that, I think. It's not something that came natural for me at all. It took me a while to get there, but you talk about asking for help, and I think that was one of the biggest things that I learned early on, is that I was always scared to ask colleagues, professionals, for help, and to ask for their insights into, especially people that have been in my situation, to ask them, what did you do? How did you get through it? What's your advice? And I found that by and large, for the most part, people were awesome at giving me their feedback, giving me their help, dedicating their time, spending 10 minutes on the phone with me, to kind of give me these words of advice that for them might take 30 seconds, but for me are just, invaluable nuggets of wisdom.
Yeah, no, it's something surprisingly that how many people are scared to, because they want to feel like they know everything. Right. And then once you overcome that fear and say, it's okay to not know everything. Right. Like it's huge. Yeah. What are some of the hurdles you've had to overcome over your life, your career? Like that's quite a journey you've had.
Sure. Yeah. I think career-wise, obviously the hurdle that I discussed, which was kind of being in a position where I'd started my own firm and I didn't necessarily have a client base to take with me, and then making the transition from litigation to transactional work involved just a lot of effort. So to give you some background, when I was litigating and I was looking to switch back into transactional work, I'd kind of like reach out to people and I'd look for other positions, and the consistent feedback was, well, you're a litigator now. That's kind of it. So tough luck, buddy. This is what you're stuck with for life. So for me, it wasn't just a question of transitioning from a firm to a new business that I was starting. It was also, while doing that, transitioning practice areas. And that was extremely difficult. And the way that I kind of got around that, right, especially as a lawyer, is you need to be trained in what you're doing. You're getting paid for your advice, right? So you better be sure that you are the expert on that topic. So the way that I got around that was when I was first getting started and I was still doing contract work, is I was taking litigation matters, but then I was also asking those attorneys to train me in their transactional matters. And so, they'd give me one gig and then another gig, and then, so you start slow, right? You get your kind of basic corporate setups, like a one-man shop, right, where somebody just wants to sell widgets. And then you build, you try and get tougher projects and more complex projects as you go along, and you do them with those attorneys. And again, that comes with asking for help, right? Just asking them to kind of consider me for these areas of law that I wouldn't necessarily be considered for, and then getting enough of those under your belt to the point where you say, okay, now I can, try one myself, still under the supervision of some other lawyer that I would typically kind of pay to overlook everything, and then just build on that and just keep building slowly but surely.
So in the transactional law, were you doing those at a reduced rate compared to the litigation stuff?
Yeah, when I first started out, I was definitely doing lower rates for those.
Okay, just to get your foot in the door.
Yeah, but also just smaller clients and less complex projects.
Okay.
Because the way I look at it is, if you know what you're doing, then you should get paid market rate for it, and if you're adding the value in that sense. But, when you have those smaller mom and pop shops that might need just a simple, LLC setup or a simple S corporation setup, then, you don't want to make it cost prohibitive for those smaller clients, especially when you're getting started. But we can still do that now too, right? Now it's a situation where my paralegals and my staff are trained to do that work. And so to the extent that we can, we assign it to the staff to make sure that it's not cost prohibitive, right? So that you're still getting your expert legal services, but you're getting it at a rate that you can afford.
Was there a point in time where you knew that your practice was in the right direction, going the right direction?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was one of those things where I was just sitting around and I was doing an inventory of the business that was coming in, and you just get the feeling that you're really busy, and you just kind of look around and you go, oh man, all of a sudden I'm back in business. I don't know if it was necessarily a specific number or an amount of clients or an amount of hours that I was billing per week that kind of let me know, but I think it was one of those things where I kind of just looked up and I said, oh man, I can do this for the rest of my life. We're good. We've got a business. So
this is a question that it always intrigues me. What's your, I don't know if you classify as your big why, like what pushed you to go through law school? Because I just heard that's tough right there alone.
Right.
Then doing litigation and then building your own practice. What was that big why for you to keep pushing through?
I think it's wanting to help people.
Okay.
And that's what I love the most about what I do now is I get to help people realize their dream. I get to protect them. I get to add value to their business. So when they succeed, it kind of makes me feel that I've helped them succeed a little bit. It's just a great feeling to feel a part of something like that. And then the other part, selfishly and personally, is I love the intellectual challenge of doing a lot of different types of things and learning about a lot of different types of industries. No two days or projects are generally the same. You've always got something a little bit different going on, which is fun.
If you could give advice to maybe that your younger self, or maybe even an attorney that's looking to get into the field, what kind of advice would you give one or both those individuals?
I don't even know if it would be as an attorney, but as a human being, I think one of the biggest lessons that I learned is that hard work is going to beat talent any day of the week. I mean, it helps to have talent too, but I think for me, as someone who I always excelled academically, and I did really well in school, and it always came naturally to me, so it was never a problem. So I think it took me longer than it should have to learn that, your talent alone, that's all good and well, but just from what I've seen in the world and in business, I just have come to believe that hard work is just more important. I think it's a lot easier to compensate for a lack of talent with hard work than vice versa.
There's people I see in my profession all the time that are so smart, but they don't do anything with that, and you're just like, oh my gosh, if you just knocked on doors, it's something to tell people how smart you are. Like, you'd be
right,
really well to do, but I totally agree with you.
And don't let people tell you, that it's a bad idea or it's stupid or don't do it, because when I first started my firm, I had so many of my friends say, just go get a job. What are you doing? This is silly. Just do what you're supposed to do. Go join the workforce. So I guess the other advice would be, if you know you can do something, just go out there and do it. And, don't take no for an answer. Just keep your head down and keep taking the necessary steps in the right direction, right? And it's not going to happen overnight, but if you keep doing the small things right over and over again, then eventually you'll get to where you need to be.
Yeah, no. You ever listen to Gary Vee, by chance? Gary Vaynerchuk? Okay.
Doesn't ring a bell.
He's a social media guy, whatever. He does like all these speeches now. I actually only heard of him probably like 6 months ago, but It's so funny. He has a very big follower base for like the social media stuff, and he was saying that he did a YouTube video every single day for a year and wasn't getting any kind of likes, comments on it.
Right.
And then it just one day hit. It was something that he posted out there, did it. And that was his thing. He goes, you just got to keep on doing it every single day because you might not see it, but you're making progress.
100%. I couldn't agree more.
What's next for yourself and your firm?
I think for the firm, we want to expand a little bit. We don't want to, become the next big law firm of the world, but to try and expand and grow a little bit to the point where, as you probably know too, when you're first starting out your business, you're afraid to just, leave for more than 24 hours, right? Because something might happen. So grow a little bit and bring on some staff, and we've been making a big push I do a lot of e-commerce work, so we have a lot of clients that are active in e-commerce. And so for me, e-commerce is not just, software as a service or companies selling products online. It's also companies that are just promoting services online, but maybe generating a lot of their income through social media and internet, right? And even more generally, I think that most companies are e-commerce companies at this point. And I think 5-10 years from now, every company is going to be an e-commerce company. But we're working on some webinars and some publications that are hopefully going to provide a little bit more guidance with regard to the laws surrounding that and things that business owners can look out for. So that's really fun, and we're looking to really build out that part of the practice as well.
With webinars in your profession, how does that work? Because you have to be very, I think, careful, right, of what you're saying out there. It has to be very broad, right?
Yeah, so the webinars that we're going to be doing are going to be through a legal publisher called CEB, who I'm also a contributing co-author for on their books on limited liability companies. And I've actually done another seminar with them on kind of selecting and forming the appropriate business entity for what you're looking to do. And so the webinar that we're going to do on e-commerce is going to be run through them, and then we're going to be doing another one, which is hanging your own shingle. So that's the webinar that I mentioned previously, where I'm kind of the bad example of, don't do this because it'll take you 5 times as long. And then we have our other Drew Koenig, who's an excellent attorney, who he was with a big law firm prior, saved up his money, had a good client base, and kind of just planned things out a little bit more. I wouldn't say better, because I'm glad it went the way that it did for me.
Who's the demographic for these webinars? The ideal demographic? It's
going to be either other attorneys or just business people that are interested in the law, but for the most part, these particular webinars are through a legal publisher, so they're geared towards a legal audience. But we do presentations and webinars all around. And for those webinars, I mean, you're right. You can't, you don't want to say something that could be construed as that some person will take later on and say, hey, well, this attorney said to do this. So you got to make sure that you've got your disclaimers in place when you're giving those, and your CYAs and things like that, and just make sure that the one big thing about the law is it's always fact specific, right? And that's why the answer to so many questions is always it depends. It depends on your particular factual circumstances. there's no one size fits all when it comes to the law for the most part.
What if someone's listening right now, they're a business owner, maybe another attorney that's looking for your guidance or questions?
Sure.
What would be the best platform, best individual to reach out to? Or
I'd say give us a call or shoot us an email or reach out on social media.
okay.
So you can find our website at www.sonalegal.com. That's SONALEGAL.com, and that'll have all of our contact information on there. So we always love to hear from people. And just by the way, SONA, the reason that we are called SONA Legal APC, we touched on this earlier. My last name being McCuaig. The McCuaig law firm was a little bit tough for clients to remember, to spell, to pronounce, and all that good stuff. So SONA is actually the Irish word for good fortune, the Irish Gaelic word for good fortune. So that's just a little shout out to my dad, who's come a long way from his little island. So Pops, I appreciate you. I probably don't tell him that enough in person, so it's good for him to hear it on here.
Do you speak any Gaelic?
He taught me a sentence or two, but that's about it.
Do you want to try it out?
Oh man, he's gonna butcher me for saying this wrong, but Whilst du gemaich, I think it means how are you doing or something along those lines.
So if anyone out there speaks Gaelic, I would love to hear your feedback if he's correct.
Yeah, my Dutch is a lot better than my Gaelic. My Dutch is still fluent, no problems
Can
there.
we get a sign-off in Dutch? Or?
Ja, dat kan makkelijk. Ik vind het heel aardig dat je me op de podcast hebt gehad. Het is heel gezellig en hopelijk is er een volgende keer.
Well, hopefully that was a positive phrase he said, but all you entrepreneurs, everyone listening out there, hopefully you got some great feedback. If you have any questions, go on the website, look at SONA Legal. I know for myself, you've been very informative, David. And if I have any business issues, I'll definitely be reaching out to you.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, guys. Please subscribe, please share, and tell your friends. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to The Road to Growth, Success of an Entrepreneur. Please like, subscribe, and stay connected. Visit www.vinnySD.com.
Yeah, I created a website.
Hope to see you again next week. Team Vinny SD, signing off.